items. I will be recording this presentation and sharing it on our website to make it publicly available to individuals who could not join or attend today. If you have any concerns about that, please feel free to message me. I ask that you keep yourself on mute for the duration of the presentation and also keep questions to the end, just in terms of compliance and kind of some of the requirements. We want to make sure that we just move through the PowerPoint presentation. But if you have questions, please either include them in the chat or just keep them until we get to the end, and we'll have an open Q&A session. Thank you all for joining. And with that, I will get started. So welcome. Additionally, if you could please type your name and agency into the chat just for attendance keeping purposes. We want to make sure that any future communication, that we have everyone's contact information as well. So please include your email address. This PowerPoint deck will be posted on our website within 5 business days. And as I said, this session is recorded. We will be recording this and updating any questions and answers that we are receiving either through email or in this session, to make sure, again, that we are fully transparent and anyone who is unable to attend the session has all of the information necessary to complete the application. The agenda for today, we'll be reviewing the general timeline, our priorities and goals for the types of projects we're hoping to see through the NOFA, identifying eligible and ineligible activities, talking through eligibility requirements for both organizations and projects, and talk through the rating criteria. Additionally, in terms of the actual application, I will be reviewing the application checklist to talk through the different types of materials you'll need to provide in order to have a complete application. The information and procedures you'll need to follow to submit your application, talk through what the review process will look like, provide some general tips, and then give you an opportunity again for an open opportunity to ask any lingering questions that you might have about any of these pieces. As you all are aware, the NOFA was initially released on November 15th, and today is the application workshop. Thank you again for joining. The application deadline, all materials are due to the Office of Housing and Community Development by January 13th at 4 p.m. Strongly recommend that you get application materials in prior to that, but January 13th is our deadline. After that, the Office of Resilience and Recovery Committee will review applications for determinations to develop a recommended set of applications to move forward for funding. Planned award notification will be at some point in Q1 of 2023, with contract negotiations beginning shortly after approval from the County Council. So what does the NOFA fund? As I said, these are funds provided through the American Rescue Plan Act, Coronavirus Local Fiscal Relief Funds. We call that ARPA for short. In case you hear that acronym, that's what that means. That's the federal law that passed to send this funding to us. Through this, we are expanding or building new licensed childcare facilities capital projects. The main criteria for this funding is that projects must increase the number of licensed childcare slots available in Snohomish County. That is the kind of the bare minimum requirement that program or projects must meet to be eligible. In addition to that kind of requirement, we have prioritization funding or prioritization requirements and projects that are located in a qualified census tract, projects that are located in childcare deserts, and programs that primarily serve low and moderate income participants, which is defined as families at or below 65% of area median income, will receive additional points in the scoring process. And I will go through what those specifically mean later in this presentation. Some example projects, not exhaustive, but we are truly trying to be as open and flexible as possible with this funding. So this could include building a new childcare facility from the ground up, adding rooms or retrofitting rooms in an existing facility to increase the number of children served at that facility, or partnering with a government or private business or truly anyone with an existing building to convert that unused space into a childcare facility. But again, we are really encouraging people and organizations to be creative in what they're putting forward in their application to just quickly increase the childcare space in the county. Awards will range from at a minimum $500,000 to up to $2 million. That is because we recognize that the requirements for this grant are pretty comprehensive, and we want to make sure that that people are coming with large enough projects and will be able to complete them in the time period allowed. This is an open and competitive funding process, and all sites must be located within Snohomish County limits. To be eligible for this NOFA, the first requirement is that the applicants are currently licensed to operate a child care program or have a plan to be licensed subsequent to completion of capital project. Programs must provide full day services to children aged birth to 5. This is focused on that 5 and below age range. Providers may currently or plan to serve children beyond the age of 5, but for this project, the investment must be supporting that 0 to 5 age range increase. Companies must have any licenses required by the laws of their jurisdiction, including licensed and paying revenue taxes to Washington State and have a business license through that. Applicants must also have a federal tax ID number or employer identification number. And if an applicant has a fiscal sponsor, that is allowable. So either the fiscal sponsor or the applicant may meet these eligibility requirements. So that's the eligibility requirements for the individual applicants for the project. Again, projects must be located in Snohomish County and be serving households who live, work, or attend school in Snohomish County. Projects must increase the total number of available licensed childcare slots. And projects must meet all zoning requirements of the jurisdiction in which the project is located. We will be going through the types of eligible activities, but all projects must be entirely comprised of what we've defined as eligible activities. And projects must meet site control requirements. In this case, a long-term lease, ownership. There are a number of different ways to meet the site control requirements, but that is a requirement. Recipients of funds are required to pay state prevailing wages for all capital related activities. We encourage projects to braid funding. Project budget should be aligned and not duplicative. And finally, recipients must dedicate improved facilities to licensed childcare operations for 20 years after project completion. So that means, and that is why we're kind of have such a high floor for the funding request. We do recognize that, you know, having a 20-year time horizon is quite long, but we do want to make sure that we see these increased childcare capacity for a long period of time. Eligible activities. So this is kind of what can be funded under the NOFA. It's construction, renovation, or rehabilitation of facilities. This includes kind of expansion of any direct delivery space, and in some cases, some non-direct service space if it's associated with an increase in direct delivery space. So for example, if you needed to add bathroom facilities, and that would allow you to expand or increase the number of children that you could serve, that as an allowable expense. Complete construction of new facilities that expand licensed capacity to serve children is allowable. Pre-construction, including design, construction cost, renovation, rehabilitation of outdoor play space, as long as it results in an increased capacity, is eligible. Soft costs, including project management, permitting costs, design, are all part of this. Improvements that provide accessibility to persons with disabilities. Acquisition costs are eligible if the provider can demonstrate they have secured enough funding to complete any subsequent rehabilitation work. And if the project is going to be serving multiple uses, only activities directly related to delivering early learning or childcare services are eligible for funding. So the space can serve multiple purposes, but we will only be paying for costs associated with the childcare delivery. Ineligible activities, in general, deferred maintenance or repairs, which do not directly contribute to making the project or property suitable for use as an early learning space, are not eligible. Purchase of equipment or furniture that is not permanently affixed is ineligible. All fundraising costs and agency staff time are also ineligible. In terms of how we will be making determinations for funding, the history of project management and financial management capacity, given that these are federal grants, there is a significant amount of oversight and paperwork required, and we are aiming to partner with organizations that have the demonstrated ability to successfully implement and manage these types of projects, as well as organizations that have appropriate financial management capacity to avoid any negative audit findings or anything along those lines. We are also looking for projects that are ready to proceed. I apologize, I should have included this on a slide, but one of the major requirements with the ARPA funding is that all of the funds need to be allocated by December 31st, 2024, and fully spent by December 31st, 2026. So this is a relatively short timeline. We are looking for projects that will be able to fully expend their award in that short timeline. So that means organizations that are ready to proceed will be given significant priority. So that includes both the ability to meet pre-contract obligations, but then also the timeline that is given twice as many points. We're really looking for those shovel-ready projects. Additionally, meeting environmental and land use issues and avoiding any environmental issues that could cause delay. And we are also, as I mentioned earlier, ready to support and very eager to support projects that incorporate support from multiple resources, so that the ARPA funding is not your only source of funding, but that you've braided resources and the ARPA dollars are really pushing your project to the next level. Project Soundness is 15 points that we have a solid understanding of the project site and surrounding areas, the impact that the project will directly contribute to a net increase in licensed capacity, and that the budget is reasonable and well supported or justified. And again, that budget forms are consistent, accurate, and thorough, so that we have that information and backup to be able to respond to any audit requests in the future. Community need and benefit is worth 30 points, and it is comprised of two sections. One is providing culturally relevant services. So that is, we are prioritizing organizations where racial equity is incorporated into their work, and that the organization is leading by example and has specific examples of existing policies and practices that demonstrates a commitment to racial equity. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, we have three target populations that we are giving priority to programs and projects that will serve these target populations. Those are projects that are located in a childcare desert, projects that are located within qualified census tracts. And I'm sorry, there's a typo on this slide. It's projects that will serve individuals at or below 65% AMI. And I'll make sure the slide gets updated prior to it's getting posted online. To determine eligibility of those funding priority points, we've put together walkthroughs that are included as attachment A and B in the application process. The map on the left shows the qualified census tracts in Snohomish County. There isn't really an easy or obvious way to go and determine if your site address is located in one of these census tracts. So if you need assistance with that, please feel free to reach out and we can help you determine which census tract your proposal site is located in and whether or not that is a qualified census tract. The other map is childcare deserts, extreme childcare access deserts in Snohomish County. As you can see, it is almost the majority or almost the entire county. And that is a dashboard that was developed and maintained by DCYF. It's much more user-friendly, but also if you need assistance determining if your site is located in that zip code, we are happy to help. I do think in the application on that attachment A, we have listed all of the zip codes. So we've tried to make that as straightforward as possible for applicants. The second or the third piece is this determining if the households that you are serving are quote unquote more impacted by COVID-19. And that is this fourth column, 65% AMI. We have the federal government has established these thresholds to determine whether or not families are kind of above or below that threshold. One of the major criteria for ARPA funding is that the projects and programs that we are funding are serving these families below these income thresholds. All right. So moving forward, to be considered complete, we'll need a number of different documents from applicants. Obviously, completing application sections 1 through 4, those are the actual questions as part of the application. We'll need the project budget forms. And for nonprofit organizations, governments, and municipal corporations, we will need either county council minutes or board minutes or board or city council resolutions just approving submission of the application. We want to make sure that and if your governing authority is aware of and supports the application itself. For-profit organizations do not need to provide that information. For nonprofit and for-profit organizations, you will need to provide this list of following documents, which allow us to certify your kind of eligibility to do business. That includes proof of 501c3 status for nonprofits, articles of incorporation and amendments, current bylaws. For-profits will need to provide an IRS notification letter of tax identification, Washington State Secretary certification of ownership entity, a mission statement, length of time in existence, ownership or board structure, a current organizational chart, current management team information, operating budget, most recent 2 years of audits with management letters or financial statements, tax returns, and a completed and signed organizational document certification form. This is, again, to help us ensure that your organization is kind of ready and able to receive these funds and manage them in a way that is fiscally responsible. Additionally, all projects will need to demonstrate evidence of site control. And again, that can be through a number of different means, which are all listed in the application. Letters of funding commitment, if applicable, again, if you're braiding multiple funding sources, architectural drawings, if available, construction specifications, if available, title report, appraisals, cost estimate, a relocation plan, if available. And then either a copy of your DCYF license, or the name the business is licensed under, or your plan outlining key activities towards licensing of this capital project. Any of those three are acceptable and meet that requirement. Finally, a business plan including current and or planned hours of childcare to demonstrate that you are providing that full day care. Moving forward, there is the additional environmental supplemental application, which is separate kind of from the main application. There is a section in the NOFA, which is the application itself. You'll need to complete that, a copy of the Thomas Guide or a similar map, county assessor property record, which you can obtain at that website, a copy of your current unanticipated discovery plan, if your project includes any ground disturbance of any kind. If you are not planning to kind of build from the ground up per se, you don't need that. A FEMA flood map with a site location marked, your EPA map with your site location clearly marked, a Department of Ecology map with your site location marked, and a map showing your measurements from the site. And we provided websites where you can obtain all of that information. We'll need a signed zoning confirmation letter if the project requires a zoning change, a history of property use, available project and site studies, photographs or aerial photos of existing site plans and drawings. If the project consists of new construction or rehabilitation, include the original total square footage of the site plus the square footage of the new site to be added. Any environmental site assessments or reviews you've already done, and any hazardous materials survey or assessment summary if you have them. Additionally, feel free to submit any information related to any environmental study or anything along those lines that you have already completed, so that we can incorporate that into your application and material review. To submit your application, you'll need to send us a physical copy of the completed application, including all attachments, and then a copy of that. So that is kind of the original application and a physical copy. You'll also need to submit an electronic application with all attachments on a USB drive. And please email us a copy of the document certification form to the OCHS mailbox. And that email address is located there. As again, applications must be received no later than 4 p.m. Friday, January 13th or earlier. What happens after submission? So OHCD will complete their eligibility review, which is going through all of those applicant requirements, project requirements, and eligible and ineligible activities to confirm that the submitted application meets all of those requirements. Simultaneously, the Office of Recovery and Resilience Review Committee will receive copies of project materials and review the application and score them using the scoring criteria outlined previously in the presentation. We'll rank and review applications, confirm that they're eligible, and that information will become a prioritized list of funding recommendations, which we will send to Snohomish County Council for final approval. And then Snohomish County Council makes the final funding awards, and at which point we can begin contract negotiations. Our biggest tips for submitting a successful application or a complete application is to really follow the required format. There's no need for you to retype questions or rating criteria in a narrative. just provide us the answers. And be as specific as possible and answer all parts of the questions. We strongly encourage you to look at our scoring criteria, which we provided in the RFP, and kind of assess how your response meets that scoring criteria. Double check your budget numbers and have an external person or someone else review your application. Just always good to get a second set of eyes or third set to make sure that your answers are clear and responsive to the questions. Start early and allow lots of time for the submission process. As I identified earlier, there are a lot of documents to collect and submit. So give yourself ample time to get all of those together. And make sure that you submit all required attachments. We've put together an application submission checklist and strongly encourage you just to go through and make sure that you are ticking off all of those boxes. We have a mailbox that we've put up to support you through this NOFA process. If you have any questions, email us at snohomishcountyrecovers@snoco.org. All questions we receive will be incorporated into our Q&A document, which will be posted on our Youth, Family, and Seniors page, linked previously. And only written answers are official responses. So everything, kind of whatever we're putting out publicly in written documentation is the best source of truth in terms of any questions you might have about eligibility or process or anything along those lines. And with that, I will stop sharing and open it up to questions. I see that we've got a number of questions in the chat, or maybe not questions, people introducing themselves. All right, scrolling through, I don't see any questions in the chat. If people, and we're getting some hands raised. I will start with Ashley.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Well, not up. Hi. I'm Ashley Morga from Mini Einsteins in Linwood, and we're actually looking to just expand into a building that we are currently under lease with. And so my question mainly is around the choice limiting activities that was listed in the application. We're looking into either it's a big project that includes obviously renovation to get some of the classrooms up to speed and fire code and things like that. But trying to wrap it all together and see what the best course is. Could you explain a little bit more about the choice limiting actions in terms of, are we able to do anything? There was a lot listed there, contract and, we're not breaking ground on anything, but there are things that are, we have a relationship with a contractor who has done some things for us before, who is ready to go. And we are like beyond shovel ready and paying, for the first quarter of 2023, paying the lease on that without doing anything is kind of scary. So if you could maybe just give us a little more information on, is there anything that we can do while we're waiting, or are we literally just sitting on our hands until we get some decision?
Yes, thank you, Ashley. This is a question we have received from a couple different organizations. So the short answer is no, it is not our intent to kind of delay or stop any construction that is already underway or is planned in the short term. If you have already begun construction or plan to begin construction prior to the award notification, you may continue work. OCHG will review environmental compliance documents to determine project eligibility. If the project is found ineligible or not in compliance with environmental requirements, then we will not fund it. So it is, it's one of the, we're not trying to stop any projects that are already underway. Does that answer your question?
I think so, in an overarching manner. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Christy, you. Can you, so I do have a question in the chat box, but can you also clarify, because what I heard her say is that they have a lease and there is the 20-year requirements. So can you talk about what that would mean for folks that are holding leases on a facility?
Yes, and I actually might pass it to Robbie, but my understanding is that site control can be that a long-term lease, so demonstrating that you will maintain site control for 20 years, is sufficient to meet the site control requirements. Robbie, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
No, that's correct.
Thank you.
So let me take the question in the chat, and then you can move around to the ones you can see in the chat. It is, if awarded, when is the soonest we would be notified, and when is the soonest we can break ground?
Thank you. That's a great question. So as we shared in the PowerPoint presentation, we are anticipating that notifications will go out by the end of Q1 2023. So that would be March 31st, 2023. There are a number of phases in terms of approval of this project, and ultimately these need to be approved by Snohomish County Council, and that can be a longer or shorter process depending on kind of council's availability and what is on the docket and things along those lines. So unfortunately, I don't have a hard deadline. As that information kind of starts to get clearer, we will absolutely make sure that the folks on this call are given additional information. We will share out when we have that information. I see Jennifer, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi, Jennifer Willows with the YMCA of Snohomish County. Just a quick question. What if an organization were to have more than one project that they would like to pursue? Would that, and let's pretend that they're both $2 million projects. Would you recommend two separate applications, or I guess that's the question. Can you submit two separate applications for different projects, or more than one application?
Yes, you may submit multiple applications. It's one application per project. So if you have two different projects, you can submit two applications. And we would encourage you to do it that way. We don't want one application with multiple projects. So each project gets its own application. Does that answer your question?
Perfectly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, going through, I don't see any more hands, so I'm going to go down the chat. I've got a question that says, you mentioned an emphasis on birth to 5. This organization starts at 30 months to 12 years old. Do infants and toddlers need to be included in the childcare spaces? No, so it is not an inclusive birth to 5. It is any portion of that 0 to 5 range, and increase in slots for 5 and under. We've got another question about site control from Ryan. Would the site control requirement be met if the facility is not currently owned by the applicant, but the applicant has an accepted offer contingent on the award of grant funds? And Robbie, I will pass that over to you.
Hi, thank you. That's a really good question, and one that we see a lot whenever we're working with capital projects. As long as you're purchasing the project and you will have site control once the loan closes and you have an agreement in place, then that's acceptable.
Another question, does the county or funding mechanism have any goals regarding average cost per added licensed childcare slot? Is there a target that would help me size my budget to meet the goals of the program? We do not. We will be taking kind of all of the applications together holistically, but we have not identified any kind of target cost per slot added.
Right. We recognize that depending on the location, the type of facility, who's operating it, that those prices may vary. Ultimately, the end goal is to increase size slots available in the community, especially in those areas that are underserved.
Thank you. Yep.
Here's another question. Must all environmental reviews be completed by the funding agency, or can we pay for this on our own and get it done right away?
Environmental reviews may be completed on your own separately from this. So feel free to move forward with those and send us that information.
Our plan is to break ground in March. So based on the previous answer, are we still able to proceed with construction? What is the total amount available for all awards?
So yes, you are able to proceed with construction. And then in terms of the total amount available for all awards, we have not set a range. We have the minimum and maximum for individual projects, and we will make awards based on applications received and need across the county. So we're keeping it a little flexible with this. If the minimum award amount is $500,000, where do home child care providers fit that are looking to increase lots? That's a great question. We intentionally set the minimum award higher to kind of focus on those larger childcare centers. For home child care providers, we anticipate that there will be additional funding opportunities starting in 2023 with smaller grants with lower kind of bureaucratic thresholds, for lack of a better term, to make it easier for those smaller providers. And then, and now that we have everyone's contact information, as those future opportunities are made available, we will make sure that everyone on this call is aware of that information.
Michael, I wonder, are you asking about lead requirements or LEED? Can you maybe come online and clarify your question?
I'm happy to. Yes, I meant like LEED silver, environmental standard. Is there any requirement for that?
Robbie.
I'm sorry, Michael, can you please repeat your question?
Of course. So the state grants, the commerce grants in particular, require you trying to hit LEED silver. And I'm just wondering if there are any LEED requirements for the building for this grant.
We're going to have to check on that for this particular funding. For our other grants there are, but for this funding, we're going to have to take a look at that.
Okay.
So we'll take a look at that and get a written response to add to the Q&As.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next question. We have now, as of now, a family-based, home-based childcare. Is there specific instructions or plans for expanding home-based childcare to larger, bigger childcare center? Can we make this plan based on the grant approval? Wonder if you can come on line and explain the question. I'm not sure I quite understand it, and I want to be sure that we fully answer it.
Hi, this is Divyesh. I'm with Deepal on the New Gen Academy preschooling. So we have a home-based childcare which has a limit of 12, and we have a lot of kids in this area, and we have to kind of seal the admission process pretty soon, and there are a lot of inquiries which are going. We have to basically reject based on the times, based on the slots we have. So we were thinking of expanding to a childcare center, but we don't have the funding to do that. So can we make a plan to, like, can we get the land and other approval processes after we know that there would be a funding on this project? Or do we have to do that before and then get the funding? So for expanding to a childcare center from a home base, we cannot do it on the same land, right? Yeah.
I would say that, yes, that would be a project that would be appropriate for this funding to be expanding from a family home to a center. And you would want to have all those other things in place. You would really need to be in a shovel-ready phase for that project if you were going to apply and be awarded for it.
Okay. And so is there a kind of if everything meets the requirement, is there a kind of assurance that the funding would be granted? Because if we start the project and then it doesn't get the approval, then we might have to stop the project. So
there's nothing that says you have to start the project ahead of time. And there's some folks who would like to, regardless of whether they're awarded the funding or not.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, but the plan for the project should be ready by the, for the grant to be done. Correct?
Yes. So with the application, you'll need a complete project and proposal and plan to move forward. I will say, again, this is a competitive process, so there is no guarantee that all eligible projects will be funded. We are waiting to see kind of how many projects we get, but I do want to make it very clear that it is very likely that some projects may be submitted that meet the eligibility requirements, but don't ultimately receive funding.
And just as a clarification for the previous question, you mentioned that you do not want to be the only funder of the project. You want to make sure that people have other funding sources. Do you have a sense of, you know, would you fund 50%? Would you fund 75%? Where's that?
And I apologize. That is, having multiple fund sources is not a requirement. It is one of the areas where we may be awarding additional points, but we may end up funding projects where we are the only funders or the only external funders if it's in some cases. So I apologize for confusion there. We projects where this is the only funding source are still eligible to apply, but just that we are hoping, or we are also examining how our funding is supporting and enhancing additional projects. In terms of a specific, percent or goal, I don't think we necessarily have those like a target for that. As I said, we're going to be looking at all of the applications we receive holistically to help make that determination and identify, what set of projects given ultimately what our final funding allocation is, will have the biggest impact across Snohomish County.
Christy and Robbie, do we want to just stop for a second for Robbie to do her piece and then come back and redo the questions? Or do you want to keep going on questions?
No, I think let's pause and Robbie has an answer to the lead question.
Okay, so I'm keeping track. If you folks with your hands up who have been patient, keep coming, have them up. You can be the first ones. And then I'm keeping track. It looks like Ashley, I think it's Ashley Morga, you're the next question. So I'll try to track that as well.
Okay, thank you. So to answer Michael's questions about the LEED standard, the LEED Silver standard, that's for those of you on the call who don't work with facilities a lot. That's for major facility projects. And that would be required, but we do want to take a look at that because there was during 2021 and 23 or through 23 fiscal biennium, there is an alternative high performance building certification. So we will want to do some additional research just to give you a better answer on that, Michael.
Okay, thank you very much. And with the Department of Commerce grants, they require you to try your best to hit those LEED requirements. Not everybody who's funded actually does it, but making a concerted effort seems to be the most important thing. So
well, and that's because it's state funding. So the state funding always wants that LEED Silver standard. Mm-hmm. But because this funding is, it's an entirely different type of funding, okay, and it seems to have a different set of requirements than what we would normally work with. So that's why we just want to do a little bit of double checking on that, because we don't want you to have to engage in something that's not absolutely required.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then Chrissy, did you want me to go ahead with the other federal requirements? Because I think you've covered the majority of them.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. Okay, did you want to give me access back so I can share this screen?
Yes, and then for the Q&A, we can continue that once Robbie has shared other federal requirements.